Well, it's time for a big video, okay, because on this video we are featuring, as you can see, all-time great Tony Canzoneri, and I do mean all-time great. On my old channel I did a video, two-part video, big video, where I went through year by year of Canzoneri's career, and he really does have a staggering career. Even in individual years, some of the level of competition and runs of fights he had were incredible, and he scored many great wins and fought so many top-rated fighters. It is crazy. So let us go through the career of Tony Canzoneri, beginning with his main career opponents. Okay, so starting on slide 1, and it is stacked top to bottom, every fighter a champion, Hall of Famer or pound pounder. Now, Tony Canzoneri has a trilogy with Andre Rutis, former world champion. Canzoneri wins 2 and loses 1. He then also fights, okay, and defeats former bantamweight champion and should be Hall of Famer, not in the Hall at the moment, but should be, the excellent Bushy Graham. Yeah, good evening, Martin. Yeah, this is a big one. On next, okay, to one of the great top 10 all-time bantamweight fighters on my rankings, Charles Bud Taylor. Now, Canzoneri fought Bud Taylor when he was younger. He split a trilogy still, scoring 1 win with 1 loss and 1 draw. And also, he defeated the great Johnny Dundee, another of the all-time greats, true all-time greats. Next up is Hall of Famer Benny Bass. Okay, Tony Canzoneri fought Benny Bass on 2 occasions, beating him both times. And he also fought former champion Al Singer on 2 occasions, Canzoneri scoring 1 win with 1 draw. He could not, though, defeat the great lightweight king Sammy Mandel, one of the underrated fighters at 1920s, and, you know, an all-time great himself. Sammy Mandel defeated Canzoneri, and then Canzoneri has a trilogy with the great Jackie Kid Berg, one of the UK's great fighters. Canzoneri wins 2 and loses 1, winning the trilogy. Next up is the very capable lightweight and light welterweight, the excellent Sammy Fuller, whom Tony Canzoneri suffers defeat to. He then scores 2 wins from 2, okay, against the great Cuban Bonbon, Kid Chocolate, winning both fights. Next up is a trilogy with Johnny Jadick, another outstanding fighter from his time. Canzoneri wins 1 and loses 2, and then he also defeats Battling Shaw, former champion, in a singular fight. Next up is the multi-weight undisputed champion Barney Ross. Canzoneri fought Barney Ross on 2 occasions, suffering defeats both times. And then former champion Frankie Click is next. Tony Canzoneri had a 4-fight series with Frankie Click, winning all 4 fights. And the final name on here, another Hall of Famer, great Mexican fighter Baby Arizmendi, whom Tony Canzoneri beat in a singular fight. But already on that first slide, massive names, you know, Bushy Graham, Bud Taylor, Johnny Dundee, Benny Bass, Mandel, Kid Berg, you know, Kid Chocolate, Barney Ross, Arizmendi. Just a staggering slide full of quality opponents. Now, interestingly, Canzoneri loses more on this slide than he does on other slides, as we go to the more rated opponents later. Okay, meanwhile, anyway, let us leave slide 1 and go on to slide 2. So slide 2 carries on in the same vein with big names. Okay, 1 is a win in a singular fight over the very underrated former featherweight champion Leo Rodak. You'll have a surprise when his video comes. He also fought a trilogy against former sparring partner and now a great fighter in his own right, the Hermika Hurricane, Lou Ambers. Canzoneri fought Ambers on 3 occasions, scoring 1 win with 2 losses, losing the trilogy. He then twice fought the great Jimmy McLaren. Canzoneri won 1 and lost 1 against the great Irish fighter, and then he also won 1 and lost 1 against the Express, okay, Hall of Fame lightweight Billy Patrol, a very, very tough fighter from his time. Next up is another all-time great, Wesley Ramey, who was pretty much a top contender across a period of a decade. Okay, Wesley Ramey was a great fighter. Tony Canzoneri lost to him in a singular fight, and then he scored wins over 2 pound-for-pound fighters. 1 is the underrated Chick Suggs. Okay, Canzoneri beat him in a singular fight, and then he also beat former pound-for-pound rated a fighter with an enormously tough career himself, Joe Glick. Canzoneri beat him in a singular fight. Now on to more rated opponents. Tommy Milton is next. Canzoneri fights Milton on 1 occasion, scoring a win, and then he also gains a win over the very capable contender Archie Bell. Canzoneri fights and loses to the tough and capable David Abad, before then also gaining a win in a singular fight with contender Johnny Green. Next up is cowboy Eddie Anderson. Okay, Canzoneri fights Eddie Anderson on 3 occasions, scoring scoring 2 wins, 1 loss, okay, to win the trilogy. He then fights Pete Sarmiento, another very capable top 10 contender, gaining a win over him in a singular fight, and then he 3 times beats former top 10 contender Ignacio Fernandez. The final name on slide 2 for Canzoneri is contender Pete Nebo. Canzoneri fights a trilogy against Pete Nebo, scoring 2 wins, no loss and 1 draw. So there's slide 2, people, but we're not done. Let's go on to slide 3. So on slide 3, okay, Canzoneri fights and defeats Vic Foley, before then also losing in a singular fight to Harry Blitman. Next up is Joey Sangor, okay, a reliable contender who mixed in very good company. Canzoneri defeated him, and then he also scored 3 wins from 3 against very capable contender and tough fighter himself with a tough career, Cecil Payne. Canzoneri won all 3 fights outright. He then also defeated Sammy Dorfman, also gaining singular wins following that against Phil McGraw and Eddie Mack. All of these guys are top 10 or top 3 rated as well, to add to the first 2 slides. Next up, okay, is a fight, okay, against Johnny Farr. I was on Eddie Mack. Yeah, he defeated Johnny Farr 3 times in another trilogy. And when you think about him, he's fought trilogies against, Charles Bud Taylor, Lou Ambers, so many trilogies, Jackie Kidberg. He has a lot of trilogies against a lot of fighters. Johnny Farr, he won all 3 fights. And then, okay, he fought twice and beat one of Chile's great fighters, Stanislaus Loaiza, beating him both times. Next up came 2 wins against former contender Tommy Grogan, before then also gained singular wins over Lou Massey and battling Gizzy. Big shout out as well to Bruce Gass in the chat. Now, another trilogy follows, okay, against top 10 contender Harry Dublinsky. Canzoneri wins 2 and loses 1. He then also gains singular win over Billy Townsend, before closing out the 3rd full slide of opponents with the very capable contender Cleto Locatelli. Canzoneri fought Locatelli on 2 occasions, winning both fights. Now, as you can see on the slides, he's suffering very few defeats and lots of wins. That we've left the champions, Hall of Famers and pound-pounders, so it's harder for these guys to beat Canzoneri because, he was one of the great fighters of his time. So, there is slide 3 for Canzoneri, but we're not done yet. Let's go to slide 4. Now, Canzoneri also beats former top 10 contender Bobby Pacho on 2 occasions from 2 fights. He then gains singular wins, okay, over 4 more contenders. The first is Joe Ganuli, okay, Canzoneri defeats him. He also gains a singular win over Al Roth, a singular win over Billy Hogan, and a singular win over Steve Haleko. Next up is Al Bummy Davis. Now, Canzoneri fought him late in his career. Al Bummy Davis was a big puncher. Now, someone said, he was a natural welterweight, but anybody who knows anything about boxing knows Al Bummy Davis came to welterweight from lower weights. Now, next up is Frankie Wallace. Now, Canzoneri defeated Frankie Wallace 2 times. Shout out to Josh Taylor in the chat, a legend as well. I'm a huge fan of Barney Ross. Yeah, you were a great fighter as well. Mixed in good company. Not as big a career as Canzoneri, but still a great fighter. So Frankie Wallace was defeated twice. Okay, Canzoneri then defeated Eddie Wolf and scored a singular win over Bobby Garcia, before also gaining a singular win over former contender Harold Smith. Next up came 2 fights against Vic Barone. Okay, Canzoneri won 1 and drew 1. He then also scored individual wins, 1 over Young Montreal, who was a fringe contender. The next over George Marks. He also scored singular wins over Gaston Charles and Philly Griffin. So there's 4 slides down for Canzoneri's main opponents, okay? On to the 5th and final slide. Now, Canzoneri defeated Luke Kirsch, okay, in a singular fight, before then fighting contender Chuck Woods on 2 occasions. Canzoneri winning 1, losing 1, and drawing 0. And then he fought his final trilogy on this. And if you look down his career slides, there's lots of trilogies. Some he won, some he lost. 1 he drew to Charles Wood Taylor, 1 win, 1 loss, 1 draw. But he's certainly a bit like Jimmy McLarnin, had a lot of trilogies. Canzoneri defeated Eddie Zivic twice from that trilogy, with Zivic winning 1. So again, Canzoneri wins a trilogy, and he scored 2 wins over Howard Scott and 1 win against former title challenger Jimmy Teague. So there is 106 major fights highlighted there. Tony Canzoneri scored 80 wins. Okay, some of the fighters on these breakdowns aren't even hit 30 fights in major fights. Canzoneri has over 100. He has 80 wins with 22 losses and 4 draws. An incredible career, okay, filled with not only the Hall of Famers, but also the former champions who were not Hall of Famers. The pound for pounders will, of course, go through those lists on the relevant slides. But so many top 10 contenders, top 3 contenders, even good fighters like Stanislaus Lueza. His video will come at some point. He had a very tough career as well, mixed in very good company. He's one of Chile's great fighters, along with Arturo Godoy and his Antoine Fernandez. As one of the best Chilean fighters, even though Chile doesn't have the largest roster in the world. But Stanislaus Lueza was a very, very capable fighter indeed. So many good opponents, and even some of the fringe contenders Canzoneri fought. Many scored many good wins themselves. So that is an incredible main opponent breakdown there. 5 slides, well, 4.5 slides nearly of opponents, but opponents covering 5 individual slides. That's incredible. So on to the first of his stat slides. Now, Canzoneri scored 44 knockouts, and some people say, well, he didn't score that many knockouts in his wins, but you have to remember fighters like Billy Patrol, Lou Ambers, Charles Bud Taylor, Jimmy McLarnin, Sammy Mandel. Many of his opponents were not easy to knock out. It's something I've always said. When you look at a knockout record, you have to look at who they were fighting. I've always said that a great knockout record has to include knockouts over great or good fighters. And if a fighter fights a lot of fighters who are very tough to knock out, don't suffer virtually any or very few knockout defeats in huge careers, you're not going to score piles of knockouts against him, because his competition was so tough that all those guys aren't going to get knocked out. But he still scored 44 knockouts, 23 of them in 3 rounds or less, and 14 in the first round. Now, Canzoneri scored 4 KOs against champions, 2 against Hall of Famers, and 3 against pound for pounders. And Tony Canzoneri scored 16 knockouts against rated fighters. Of course, Canzoneri has full ratings information for his video. Soon we'll get to a point eventually, once I've done the 1899 30 where every fighter will have full rating information on opponents. So Canzoneri boxed 1,385 career rounds. He fought a total of 259 title fight rounds and a massive 384 rounds against champions. Now, Canzoneri also fought 260 rounds against Hall of Famers. That is the equivalent of more than 20 12-round distance fights against Hall of Famers. Incredible. He also fought 336 rounds against pound for pounders. Now, against rated opponents, because we have full information. Okay, a big shout out to Surrealist Idealist in the chat as well. Good to see all you fellas. So against top 10 fighters, Tony Canzoneri fought a staggering 842 rounds against top 10 fighters. He also fought a staggering 531 rounds alone, what is more than some of the sport's top boxers now entire round total for the career. Canzoneri fought 531 rounds against top 3 rated fighters. That is a crazy tally. He also fought just over 200 rounds against ring champions with a total of 207. I first learned of Canzoneri from UBL. Well, thank you, Surrealist. Yeah, that's very kind of you to say. One of the things I always try to do on my other channel that I'm doing on this channel, I do videos on many fighters, some great ones who people are not as familiar with, because like I've always said, no one is an expert. Okay, no one can come on YouTube and ask to know who Canzoneri is, who Harry Wills is, who Mysterious Billy Smith is. I've always said, don't slate until you've researched. But one of the things that I've always set out to do is talk about as many fighters as I can. So that's very kind of you to say. I appreciate that. But that's why I'm here, to try and raise awareness of fighters. So there is the KOs and rounds boxing information for Canzoneri. Now we're going on to his slides against champions, Hall of Famers and pound for pounders. I nearly choked it, but nearly went down wrong roll. I had a drink, sorry. My apologies. Oh dear. That'll teach me to finish talking while I'm drinking. Right, anyway, so let's crack on. So, the slide against champions. Now, we have to remember there were not 17 divisions and there were not 4 champions per division. Canzoneri had 36 fights against champions. 36, including 22 wins, 12 loss, 2 draw. And when you consider again, I always point out, from his 12 defeats, once to Bud Taylor, 2's to Luambers, once to McLarnin, 2's to Barney Ross. Many of those defeats champions are to top level fighters or Hall of Famers. Incredible tally though, 36 fights against champions. Now Canzoneri, even in his time with his limited number of divisions, with very few of the intermediate divisions, Canzoneri still managed to defeat 15 individual world champions. Okay, they were Andre Rutis, Bushy Graham, Charles Bud Taylor, Johnny Dundee, Benny Bass, Al Singer, Jackie Kid Berg, Kid Chocolate, Johnny Jaddick, Bartlin Shaw, Frankie Click, Baby Arismendi, Leo Rodak, Lou Ambers, and the great Jimmy McLarnin. Some incredible names in there. Now, Canzoneri from those 15 champions beat, scored knockouts or stoppages over 4 of them. Al Singer, Jackie Kid Berg, with that right hand rocket, Kid Chocolate, and Frankie Click. So, large numbers again, large numbers of champions beat. When we go on to Hall of Famers, Canzoneri is in the nearly double-digit club. If he gets another added, like Bushy Graham or, someone like that, then he'll hit double figures. But Canzoneri at the moment has 23 fights against Hall of Famers, including 12 win, 10 loss and 1 draw, and he defeated 9 individual Hall of Famers. They were Charles Bud Taylor, Benny Bass, Johnny Dundee, Jackie Kid Berg, Billy Patrol, of course, who was not on the champion list, Kid Chocolate, Baby Arismendi, Lou Ambers and Jimmy McLarnin. And Canzoneri scored knockouts over 2 Hall of Famers individually, Jackie Kid Berg and Kid Chocolate. So there's the champions and Hall of Fame slides. When we go on to the pound for pound slide, we see Canzoneri, massive numbers again. He had 31 fights against pound for pound fighters, including 17 wins, 13 loss and 1 draw. And Canzoneri defeated 14 individual pound for pound rated fighters, so 3 below Greb, but still a massive tally. Those 14 pound for pounders were Bushy Graham, Charles Bud Taylor, Johnny Dundee, Benny Bass, the very underrated Chick Suggs, Jackie Kid Berg, Joe Glick, Billy Patrol, Kid Chocolate, Johnny Jaddick, Baby Arismendi, Leo Rodak, Lou Ambers and Jimmy McLarnin. And he scored knockout or stoppage over 3 pound for pounders individually, Chick Suggs, Jackie Kid Berg and Kid Chocolate. So that ends the slides on the champions, Hall of Famers and pound for pounders. So now, for one of few times, is it the first time, full rating information on rated opponents. So Tony Canzoneri had a total of 90 fights against top 10 rated fighters, okay, including 68 wins, 19 losses and 3 draws. So he had nearly 70 wins against top 10 rated fighters. Now Canzoneri is in that rare club of fighters who have had more than half a century of fights against top 3 rated fighters. Canzoneri had 53 fights against top 3 rated fighters, including 36 wins, 16 losses and 1 draw. And against ring champions, okay, Canzoneri had a total of 18 fights, including 10 wins, 8 losses and no draws. Now that means, okay, well, it don't mean science shown, but Tony Canzoneri in his career defeated 47 individual rated fighters, okay, so of course he fought some of those more than once, and when you look at fighters like Frankie Click, etc., he beat those 47 sometimes more than once, but he still defeated 47 individual rated names. And Tony Canzoneri knocked out 16 individual rated fighters, okay, so from those 47 he knocked out mathematically by a tiny percent, just over a third of those fighters he also scored knockouts against at one point or another. So incredible numbers there, 90 fights against top 10 fighters, 47 rated opponents beat, and over 50 fights against top 3 rated fighters alone. So from there we go on to his title fight slide. Okay, Canzoneri also has a very decorated title fight history. He had 22 world title fights. He had a record of 12 wins, 9 loss and 1 draw, and Canzoneri made a total of 8 title defences. Now of course he failed in his first world title challenge down at bantamweight against Charles Bud Taylor. When he did finally defeat Taylor later, a title was not on the line. He would then beat Bass and Johnny Dundee at featherweight, in featherweight title fights, and then go on to do what he did. He'd lose to Mandel, of course, at lightweight, but then capture lightweight titles and light welterweight titles. Very decorated title fight history. And one of the things I always point out, when you look at some fighters and their long title fight runs, if you write a list of all Tony Canzoneri's title fight opponents in all his 22 title fights and write down who were champions, Hall of Famers, and say top 5 rated. I mean, it is staggering. The quality of opposition he fought in his title fight record is staggering. Okay, so from those 12 win, 9 loss, 1 draw, Canzoneri made 8 defences and he scored 2 title fight KOs. Now, from those 12 wins, Canzoneri scored 10 wins against top 10 rated fighters, 6 wins against top 3 rated fighters, and he scored nearly half of those 12 wins were against fighters who held ring titles, with a total of 5. Now, Canzoneri scored 8 wins against champions in title fights. More than half of those title fight wins were actually against fighters now in the Hall of Fame, with 7 wins against Hall of Famers from 12 in title fights. He also scored 7 wins against pound for pounders in title fights. So Canzoneri doesn't only have the resume and the accomplishments, he's got the decorated title fight record. Like a Sugar Ray Robinson, when you actually look at who he fought in his title fight record, the Ring Magazine fights at year, the Hall of Famers, the staggering quality of his title fight record is awesome. Canzoneri is another. Okay, and that's why I always say, don't just look at a record. If a fighter has a good title fight record, like Omar Andres Narvaez, I respect him for what he did, a champion for so long with all those defences. But at the same time, if you've got a smaller title fight record but filled with way more quality, it's, to me, a better thing. It shows that you've got, to me, a better title fight record. Even if title fight record is smaller, if you filled it with top quality opposition and great battles, to me, you're the winner, even with a smaller title fight record. So there's Canzoneri's title fight numbers there. So on to his titles won. Tony Canzoneri failed at bantamweight against Bud Taylor, but he was young and Bud Taylor was very experienced. But Canzoneri basically captured still the world featherweight title. He captured twice the world lightweight title and twice the world light welterweight title before its hiatus for a time. So lineal titles, Canzoneri also captured the lineal featherweight title on one occasion, and he was a 2-time lineal lightweight champion and a 2-time lineal light welterweight champion, and mirrored also with the undisputed titles won. Canzoneri captured 5 undisputed titles across 3 divisions. He captured undisputed at featherweight, 2-time undisputed lightweight champion, and 2-time light welterweight. So there ends the video on an incredible career, Tony Canzoneri. This one's gone over 20 minutes because he is a great fighter. He's an all-time great, a legitimate all-time great. He's captured 5 undisputed titles in 3 divisions. He's got an absolutely star-studded resume. He's beaten 9 Hall of Famers. He's fought those Hall of Famers over 20 times. He's had 36 fights against champions, decorated title fight record. He's what I call a whole house. Okay, he's got the great title fight record, the great resume, the great accomplishments, everything. Whereas when you match those criteria to certain fighters, even basic, not all fighters meet all those criteria. So there's the great video on Tony Canzoneri. I'm glad to have him. He will join my lightweight playlist. And to everyone in the chat, okay, thank you for joining me. I always remember Tony Canzoneri, he did an interview. I read a newspaper interview. It was just a few years after he'd retired. And Tony Canzoneri was very happy with what he did. And this interviewer said to him, how does it feel now that you're retired? What are your thoughts on your career? And Tony Canzoneri said, well, wherever I go now, I'm walking down the street and people are coming up to me saying, are you Tony Canzoneri? And Tony Canzoneri said, that's how I know I've done well for myself. Brilliant. Anyway, guys, take care. I'm the Boxing Librarian. Great fighter, Canzoneri. I'm out for now.